Let's be real for a second. Who actually has the final say over your digital life? You know, the fight for your data and your privacy, it's moved way beyond just having good antivirus software. It's now being fought on entirely new battlegrounds, and believe me, the rules are changing faster than any of us can keep up.
So let's ask the big question right up front. Who really controls what you do online? Is it your internet provider? The apps on your phone? Is it you? It feels like it should be a simple question, right? But the answer is getting more and more complicated every single day.
And that's because the battlefield itself has completely shifted. This isn't just about hackers in a dark room trying to get past your firewall anymore. No, this fight is now happening out in the open, in state legislatures, in huge international trade disputes, and deep inside the very architecture of the devices you're probably holding in your hand right now.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about how governments are jumping into the fray. They are literally redrawing the digital map, and they're asserting all kinds of new authority over technology for reasons like security, safety, and, well, a new kind of national interest.
Let's take Texas, for example. There's a new law on the books that's about to completely change how people there use an app store. Starting in 2026, if you want to create a new account, you're going to have to verify your age. And if you're a minor, your parents will have to approve every single app you install.
And this right here shows you the central conflict we're seeing play out everywhere. The stated goal is, of course, child safety, and who can argue with that? But tech giants like Apple are warning that to even comply with this, they might be forced to collect sensitive personal data from everybody just to let you download a simple weather app. They say they'll comply, but you can see this is a massive privacy trade-off.
This isn't just a US thing either. Hop over to Europe, where the Dutch government just took a really dramatic step. They used a special law to essentially seize partial control of Nexperia, that's a chipmaker owned by the Chinese company Wingtech, all to stop sensitive semiconductor tech from being moved out of the country.
As you can probably guess, Wingtech was not happy. They called it excessive interference and pointed the finger at geopolitical bias. And the reaction really tells you how high the stakes have gotten. We're talking about the global supply chain for stuff that powers everything from electric cars to AI, and governments are now treating it like a strategic battleground. And back in the US, the FCC is using a different tactic. They've basically forced major online retailers to pull millions of listings for electronics made by Chinese companies like Huawei and ZTE. Their reasoning? National security risks. They're worried these devices could potentially be used to spy on Americans.
So let's just step back and connect the dots here. We've got three totally different government actions, right? A state law, a corporate takeover, and a retail ban. But look at the shared theme running through them all. Whether the goal is child safety, economic security, or national security, governments are done sitting on the sidelines. They are now actively shaping the technology we use every single day.
But governments aren't the only ones making big moves here. There's this incredibly powerful counter-movement bubbling up, where everyday consumers, regulators, and even single activists are pushing back, demanding more control over their own data. So let's take a look at how that fight for privacy is really unfolding.
And you know what? This pushback has some serious teeth. California's privacy agency just smacked the retailer Tractor Supply with a $1.35 million penalty. That's the largest fine the agency has ever handed out, and it was all for violating the state's Consumer Privacy Act.
And this isn't just about going after the usual suspects in Silicon Valley. The agency made it crystal clear that their enforcement is going to reach beyond big tech. What made this case so groundbreaking is that it's the first time anyone has enforced privacy protections for job applicants. It's a huge signal. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, if you collect personal data, these rules apply to you.
And California is pushing the envelope even further with something called the Opt Me Out Act. This is a new law that will force browsers to give you a super simple one-click setting to block tracking all across the web. It basically puts privacy control right back in your hands. Now, here's the catch. It doesn't actually go into effect until 2027, so we'll have to wait a bit for that one.
You know, sometimes the pushback doesn't come from a big government agency. Sometimes it starts with something as small as a single person's code.
And it ends up rattling an entire proposal from the European Union. Seriously, a software engineer over in Denmark built a simple little website called Fight Chat Control. It gave anyone an easy way to email EU lawmakers and oppose this really controversial surveillance bill. Well, the response was so massive, so overwhelming, that it brought the legislation to a screeching halt.
So why were people so fired up about this?
Well, the chat control idea was supposed to fight child abuse by scanning everybody's private messages, a noble goal for sure. But critics, including Germany's own justice minister, warned that it would basically create a system of mass surveillance, completely destroying the promise of privacy and encryption for millions and millions of people.
So you have these huge battles playing out in law and in politics. But underneath all of that, the technical threats, the actual hacks and attacks, they just keep getting more sophisticated, and they're always finding new weaknesses to exploit.
Okay, check out the recent attack involving Salesforce. The hackers didn't even try to break into Salesforce's main platform. It was too secure. Instead, they tricked some employees into installing a malicious app. That app gave them access to a third-party tool called Drift, and from there, they stole the keys to customer data. It's a perfect example of a supply chain hack. And when Salesforce wouldn't pay the ransom, data from huge companies just got dumped onto the dark web.
And the attacks themselves are just getting sneakier. Researchers just uncovered a new technique they're calling pic snapping. The easiest way to think about it is like a malicious app being able to secretly take a snapshot of what's on your Android screen, completely bypassing security features. It can steal info from your browser or even from other apps running on your phone. And this is not just some theory. To prove how dangerous this is, the researchers used pic snapping to steal two-factor authentication codes right out of the Google Authenticator app in less than 30 seconds. And yeah, while patches are available, new workarounds have already been discovered. It's a constant, never-ending cat-and-mouse game. Okay, so we've seen governments drawing new lines in the sand, we've seen people pushing back hard, and the technical threats are just getting weirder and more complex. What in the world does all of this actually mean for you? And what's your place in this new digital landscape?
So what are the new rules of the road here? Well, first, as we saw with Texas, your digital identity isn't just yours anymore. It's now a subject of state law. Second, that tech supply chain, like with the Dutch chipmaker, is now treated like a strategic national asset that countries will fight over. Third, privacy rules now have real multi-million-dollar consequences. Fourth, and this one is so important, individual action can actually influence policy, just like that one developer proved with chat control. And finally, the technical threats are not slowing down.
All of this really boils down to one final massive question. We're watching governments, giant corporations, individual activists, and shadowy hackers all trying to write their own rules for the digital world. As this world gets completely reshaped all around us, who do you think is actually going to come out on top and write the final chapter?